Okay, Dr. K here. Before we get started with this week's interview with Dr. Michelle Finisteel, I have an important announcement, another one. I have accepted a full-time job as a daytime ER vet at an amazing hospital in Phoenix. If you've listened to the first couple of podcast episodes, and if you've read my third book about practicing small animal medicine, then you know how important I think it is for us to be very, very selective, very choosy in deciding where we're going to work. And having experienced working for both wonderful and terrible animal hospitals, I think I've gotten pretty good at recognizing a good thing when I see it. Now, my initial intention was to work relief in Phoenix only, and that's how this started out. I still plan to be selective about where I worked, but just a little less so, because if you're relief, there's things that you can put up with that on a temporary basis that you know that you don't have to deal with as a full-time employee, and it's okay. But I did not expect to find a place where I looked around and thought, wow, I could see myself as being a full-time employee at this organization, but that's what I found, and it was so great. So after about 15 shifts at this hospital, I knew it was for me. Great standard of care, incredibly skilled support staff, and you know what struck me most of all and made me think that I wanted to become a part of that team was that everyone that worked there was happy. They were happy. And to me, that indicates a positive culture and good management. Being a veterinarian can be psychologically, emotionally, and physically very draining. From last Friday to last Tuesday, I worked 60 hours. That's 60 hours in 4 days. Yes, I was very tired. Yes, there were some difficult cases. Yes, there was stress and frustration. But when you work at a good hospital with good people and feel supported by good management, tired is just tired. And the stress and the frustration are fleeting. They're just temporary. And at the end of those 4 days, despite being tired, I was still happy. So I told them that I wanted to work for them full time. And since getting back to Phoenix on Wednesday, I've filled out all their paperwork. I found an apartment near the hospital. My husband and I spent Friday driving around Phoenix in 110 degrees, driving around in a box truck, going to used furniture stores to put stuff in the apartment. Now I have the essentials. I've got a desk and chairs. I've got a couple of chairs to sit and relax in, and I have a bed. Because I did not get the bed from a used furniture store, but it's just a couple of box springs and a mattress on the floor, but that's good enough. It's just a crash pad, and the apartment is going to cost me less than half of what I had been paying in hotel fees. But needless to say, it has been a heck of a week. And provided I pass my background check, I start my new schedule the weekend after next. Of course, all this time, I have also been thinking about you and how I'm going to continue providing the help and advice you need in order to ensure your own happiness in this field. On the one hand, I'm going to have so many more of my own stories to share with you. But on the other hand, I won't have nearly enough time. So, at least for the short term, until I get a better feel for my new schedule, I've decided to cut back on the podcast to 1 episode a month. I feel bad for cutting back since I really believe these interviews are chock full of essential information and advice, and I love talking to all of these wonderful, amazing people. But as Dr. Matt Holland and I discussed during episode 16, we all need to be cognizant of our own limitations and to be disciplined enough to cut back or say no to things in order to maintain our own emotional, psychological, and physical health. And often that means cutting back even on things we really love and want to do. So that's where I am right now. The other reason I feel it's important that I cut back on the podcast is because the time it's been taking me to reach out, invite, schedule, interview, edit, and get approvals on every episode, that time has been preventing me from doing other things that I feel are also really important for you. The book that I'm working on now, which is book 4, and it's entitled Competence, Caring, and Caring Too Much, covers what I believe to be the most important things you need to know about staying happy in this field. And I must carve out more time to complete this book for you. I am, however, not going to cut back on the monthly bonus episodes for Patreon supporters. As a matter of fact, I expect to have even more to share and talk about during the monthly bonus episodes. ER medicine has always been my favorite. It's interesting and exciting, and getting to be a daytime ER veterinarian at a great hospital has always been my dream. So I have to commute 2 hours each way to Phoenix and stay at a crash pad several nights out of the week. It's worth it. And it's a way for my husband and me to start getting really aggressive about paying down our student loans. So thank you, as always, for listening. And I am so honored to be able to share my stories and the stories of others to help you realize your dreams and master your future reality. You'll be hearing from me less, but I am still here. I am still thinking about you. And I am going to continue doing my best to empower you to manifest your magnificent future. And since I forgot to ask Dr. Finistil at the end of the interview, because I was so excited, I forgot to ask her how you can get in touch with her. So I just want to make note of it here. In the show notes, there is a hyperlink that you can click on to go to her website and contact her. And her website is www.scarletspirit.com. And if you're interested in perhaps starting a business like she started, where the focus is on consulting, maybe you're a current DVM and you want to try something other than clinical practice, she is currently offering a free download on the top 3 ways to get more clients. And that link is also in the show notes. And without further ado, here she is. Dr. Michelle Finistil is the CEO of Dorigo Food Safety and Scarlet Spirit Enterprises. Her businesses are focused on helping others build profitable, sustainable businesses. Dr. P earned a Bachelor of Arts in 1996 from Wellesley College. She majored in economics and geology and worked in information technology. After graduation, she worked for an oil company and then was a Peace Corps volunteer in Jordan. When she came home from her stint abroad, she decided to take her passion for problem solving to veterinary medicine. Dr. Finistil earned her DVM degree in 2006 from the University of Georgia. She was selected for the Health Professions Scholarship Program her sophomore year. As a veterinary student, she studied lab animal medicine and intended to pursue a career in primate medicine. Upon receiving her DVM degree, Dr. P commissioned into the U.S. Army Veterinary Corps, where she learned the food safety skills she now brings to producers and processors across the country. She served at Fort Monmouth in New Jersey and the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. After fulfilling her active duty commitment, Dr. P settled with her family in southern Maine, where they raise chickens and the occasional ruminant, experiment in the kitchen, and explore the woods around their home. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Michelle Finistil. Thank you so much for being here. I know you must be very busy.
I am, but I am delighted to be here, and I am never too busy for people and causes that I care about. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. It's an honor to have you here. I'm so fascinated by your history and your biography, and I'm going to try really hard not to get lost because it's not linear at all, which I love. My history is not linear either. So let me just start with, okay, so you earned a Bachelor of Arts. You had a liberal arts degree in economics and geology. Now, look, what were you, like 18 then?
Yeah, I was, I went to Wellesley undergrad, and I originally actually went to Wellesley to study computer science. And it turns out I really can't program. And so I ended up taking economics courses, like we had to do distributions, and I really found economics and geology through my distribution requirements. And like economics is really the science of decision making and how systems work. And geology, I'm not going to lie, I picked it because we had the best field trips.
Okay, that explains it. Because I was like, okay, most people who are like young, 18, 19, going for their undergraduate degree, I mean, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know who I was. It's so
Right.
early to be picking these things out. But usually, if you don't really know, you pick something like sociology or psychology, or as in my case, marketing, which did turn out to be helpful. But like economics and geology, like that's pretty specific. So the geology was for the field trips. Okay.
Yeah, geology was for the field trips. But one of the things about a liberal arts education, and I will just put this plug in because I totally believe in liberal arts education, is that it teaches you to think. Okay. And so I had, up until I took my pharmacology exam in vet school, the hardest exam I ever took was my sediments and stratigraphy exam, where our professor dropped us off at an outcrop and said, "Tell me what happened." And so like it was crazy. I mean, it was a final. It took 2 weeks. It was my senior year of college. And I have never worked so hard on a final exam in my entire life until probably pharmacology. And it was the idea that a liberal arts education teaches you to think and teaches you to write, I think is being lost, and I think is not valued when you are applying to vet school. And I think that's to the detriment of our profession.
Yeah, I agree. I also, the first time around, I had a degree in liberal arts, but I wouldn't think of geology as liberal arts. I mean, I would have thought it was a science.
Well, it is a science. At my college, I mean, I went to a college and not a university, so I got a bachelor's of art with a major in geology. Other places, it's totally a bachelor's of science. And the emphasis when you do, like when I did undergraduate geology, was on systems thinking and that sort of thing. And we had, I mean, it was a science class. We had labs and all that sort of stuff. But then, it doesn't get you very far when you're trying to get into vet school to have degrees in economics and geology. And so I was like 9 credits or something away from getting a biology degree from Georgia, another, like a bachelor's of science in biology. And I got into vet school and I didn't want to pay for it. I already had the undergraduate degree, and I could have gone and gotten another one, but.
Right. I did the same thing. I did the same thing when I went back to get my science prerequisites for vet school. I had them. I didn't need any more to get in. So, I was like a semester short for getting another bachelor's degree, a BS.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. God bless the state of Georgia, but I really did not want to take that Georgia civics class. I had no mental space for doing that. There's biochemistry and genetics and like Georgia civics.
Oh God. Yeah, I would have passed on that too.
Right. Like, why would you do that?
No, it doesn't sound interesting in the least. But before we get to Georgia, where you ended up getting into veterinary school, I mean, you did some really cool, interesting stuff. You worked for an oil company, and then you were in the Peace Corps. So, like, how did that happen? So it sounds like you did some work in information technology, even though, as you confess, you're a terrible programmer.
Right, but the good thing about information technology is it's mostly not computer programming. I like help people. This was like back when the World Wide Web was getting set up. We help people set up web pages and emails and use email communications. I work for information technology systems at my college. It was like my work study job, right? And I manned the help desk. PC support. This is Michelle. How can I help? And I learned so much from that around how to talk to grumpy professors and how to talk to people and explain things so that they could solve their problems.
Nice. I love your attitude of like everything is useful. It might seem random,
Like,
Right.
right.
Your path might seem nonlinear and not to like make all that much sense from a bird's eye view, but you learn something from everything, from every single experience. And then it's just up to you to apply it more broadly. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely absolutely correct. And there are, I didn't particularly enjoy working for the oil company, but it led me to go to the Peace Corps, and I didn't particularly enjoy the Peace Corps either for a whole lot of reasons. But everything sort of adds in on itself, and I
Yeah.
think that's taking what you can and having your own back on decisions. Like, I don't beat myself up around decisions because it's not. I mean, my ability to go back and change the past is non-existent, and so you might as well have your own back on decisions and take what you can and learn and grow from those decisions.
Well, but I know we have so many things to talk about, and I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on the oil company and the Peace Corps, but I do want to know like something like, how did you end up working for an oil company? What were you doing? Then how did you end up in the Peace Corps? What was that like? And what were the things that you didn't like about it?
Okay, well, so I ended up working for Amoco Oil, which has since been bought out by British Petroleum. And I was doing economic evaluations of oil wells. So it was actually a job that brought together economics and geology.
Nice.
But what was really kind of odd was that I did valuations of all of these wells, and they only closed the wells that were run by female engineers. And so here I am coming out of a women's college, liberal education, I worked out west in Denver. And the result of my first job outside of college was a whole bunch of women got laid off. Yeah.
So are you saying that that their being laid off had nothing to do with your analysis? There was no correlation?
There's no correlation.
Okay. WTF.
Yeah. I mean, but talk to any female engineers in the oil and gas industry, and that was fairly prevalent. They really didn't like women in the oil and gas industry. I don't know that it's changed. I have a hard time believing that it has, but you never know. So that experience really, I was like, when I saw that that was happening, I was like, I've always wanted to be a Peace Corps volunteer. And I sent in my application. I had a fabulous interview, and I got picked to go to the Middle East. We were Peace Corps Jordan 1. We were the first group of Peace Corps volunteers back in the Middle East since the Marine Corps barracks bombing back in the early 80s. And we were there because of the Clinton peace initiative between Jordan and Israel. And the story, actually, it's a fairly interesting story. Queen Noor, she's now the Dowager Queen, but she was Queen of Jordan at the time. She's American, of course, and she wanted to be a Peace Corps volunteer, and her father wouldn't let her. And so the next best thing is to grow up, become regent of your own country, and get Peace Corps volunteers to your country. And so it was really fairly crazy. And we were there a lot to kind of smile at the cameras. I worked in a Palestinian refugee camp teaching Palestinian girls how to use computers, how to use Microsoft Word and that sort of thing. And it was really difficult to teach girls how to use computers like they have these centers, and they go home to know electricity. Like there was a lot of disconnect about what was going on, and there were development dollars being used in ways that were fairly challenging, which is true of the development world. But, I like to think we did some good.
Right.
I think every Peace Corps volunteer would like to think they did some good.
Right. It sounds like what you're saying is it was good intentions, but it was poorly planned, and it didn't take into account the logistics of reality of where you were.
Exactly. Which is unfortunately what happens with a lot of development.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's really frustrating. That
Sure.
drives stuff like that drives me crazy, because it's like, if we had just thought more carefully about this beforehand, this could be something really great. And now it's just a cluster F.
Right, exactly. And so, I actually ended up leaving early. But whatever, I did the best I could. And it was kind of in coming home, that and figuring out what the heck was I going to go do with my life. I was now mid-20s and trying to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. Um, and that's the first time where I really started thinking about veterinary medicine.
Yes. And
I'm
why?
one of those people who grew up saying I want to be a veterinarian. It
I,
never occurred to me. When I was 9 years old, I wanted to be an Air Force
so
pilot.
now there's two of us, you and me.
Right.
And I don't know anyone else who didn't want to be a vet when they were a kid and then became a vet later. So, but
Yeah.
why? Why?
Well, I
What
think
was
it
it?
was a couple of things. One, when you're in the Peace Corps, you spend a lot of time sitting around smoking and drinking and talking with your fellow Peace Corps volunteers. And a lot of them talked about how hard it was to become a veterinarian. And we all, anybody listening to this podcast is probably familiar with that journey of how hard it is to become a veterinarian. And so that kind of planted the seed in my mind, around, I do a lot of hard things. And then when I got home, actually what happened was I had a cat get sick. So it was, I don't know, the cat was probably 12 at the time. And looking back on it with, veterinary education now, I realized that the cat had diabetes. It took our veterinarian 3 months to diagnose that diabetes. Well, right, exactly. I'm sorry, but there's no way that cat shouldn't have been diagnosed the first time out.
Right?
And it was in the process of trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with my cat that I realized that I really liked the science
Yeah.
of medicine. And so I was looking at both veterinary school and medical school, and I had some conversations where it's like, well, I really don't feel like dealing with Medicaid and Medicare and insurance and that sort of thing. So they don't have that over in veterinary medicine. Let's go do that, because I like the science behind all the medicine, and so that's kind of how I picked it. And what I ended up doing was I'm not going to lie, okay, I came out of Wellesley with a 2.7 GPA. I was one of 10% of my class that did not get Latin honors. I didn't write an honors thesis. Okay. I graduated from college and I loved Wellesley and everything about it. I'm the president of my alumni association here in Maine. But I graduated with a 2.7. Okay. A 2.7 does not get you into vet school at all.
No.
And so what I just ended up deciding to do, I was living in Boston at the time. I was actually living in Cambridge, and I decided that I was going to quit my job. I was in a job with an internet startup company trying to get banks and insurance companies onto the internet. And this was back in 99, in the first internet boom years. And my cat was sick and all these things were going on at the same time. And so I decided I was going to quit my job and I was going to go to Harvard Extension and take freshman chemistry, 8 credits in 8 weeks. And if I got an A in first semester and second semester chemistry, I would proceed on. I got the A and I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. I'm not kidding. I did freshman chemistry 90 hours a week. I would wake up, I would bike down to the science center at Harvard. I lived near MIT. I would bike down to the science center at Harvard. I would spend, the library opened at 7:00. I would spend from 7 to 8:30 studying. I would go to class. We had class all morning. We broke for lunch. We went to lab. I would go back to the science center. I would write up my lab reports, and I left the science center at 9. And I did that for 8 straight weeks.
Wow. That's
plus studying on the weekends. Yeah, oh no, it was completely insane, but it was a great class. I mean, we had Professor Jim Davis, who, if your listeners are familiar with Car Talk, back when Car Talk was on NPR, whenever the Maliazis would have a chemistry question, they would call Jim Davis, the professor. He's the freshman chemistry professor. He was a fixture in Harvard Square, and he was a great professor. And my TA was had a double major at Harvard in like chemistry and opera or something. And so every Friday he would sing to us. So
Wow. Wow. Oh, I love this story. Oh my God, that you and I were so similar, like very similar. Because I, had started as a non-traditional student as well. And I tested myself by taking biology 1. And I said, if
sure.
I can get an A in bio 1, I will keep going.
Right.
A lot easier to get an A in bio 1 than chemistry. So, wow. Especially the way you
Right. Freshman chemistry at Harvard.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Then I would have been like, oh yeah, no problem. Wow. So then, and you say so the way that I got in touch with you is I actually saw a webinar that you did for entrepreneurialism. So I'm just to let the listeners know that I am not clairvoyant in any way. That's going to preface how I know some of the things that I didn't mention in your bio. But in your webinar, you talked about being because you were a non-traditional student, it was even more important for you to get in-state tuition. And Georgia was the least expensive vet school at the time. And so you went down to Georgia to establish residency. And how did you do that? I mean, I thought, because some states say you can't be a student for a year. You have to work here for a year, and then you can be an in-state student. But did Georgia have a different rule?
Well, so I tiered it. So I ended up in Georgia because one of my Peace Corps friends, she came home and she was living in Georgia, and she's like, hey, why don't you come down here? We'll live together. You can work at a local vet clinic and go to Georgia State. I was going to live in Atlanta. And, we'll just hang out while you're getting into vet school. I was like, okay. Because I was looking at things and trying to figure out how I was going to, do this for the least amount of cost. And Harvard's expensive. And shockingly enough, UMass Boston was even more expensive than Harvard Extension, which makes no sense. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, why don't I go down and get in-state tuition, because I had so many credits to make up. And so what I ended up doing was moving down to Georgia. It didn't turn out with my friend. She up and moved to China to go teach English as a second language in China. And I got a job with the vet of a friend of the family. And I moved to Georgia. I worked for a semester, and then I actually ended up going to Winder Community College to take an English class. And so I did that so that I could, there was no in-state or out-of-state tuition at community college, or there was not at the time. And I used that. I was like, I used that as a way to say, no, I am an in-state resident. And because I had a break and I worked for a semester. And then I applied to UGA at Athens, and I got in to do the rest of my undergraduate stuff. And I paid, I think, one semester of out-of-state tuition, which was not that high back then. You have to remember, this was in the late 90s, before they had these gargantuan tuition hikes at all of our state universities. And so by the time I applied to Georgia, I was paying taxes in the state. I had a state driver's license. I had done absolutely everything. And I truly was an in-state resident. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to apply to Georgia as an in-state resident. And so that's how I did it, because having a lower debt was incredibly important to me. That's why I went for an in-state school, because living in Massachusetts, my options were Tufts, Penn, and Cornell. And I didn't want to be paying off my veterinary degree until I retired.
Or beyond.
Or beyond, God forbid. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, and I want to just call out what you said about in the webinar about it was even more important because you were a non-traditional student. And what I inferred from that is because you were older and you had fewer years ahead of you to earn.
Well, sure. Right? Exactly. Because if you think about it, when you make a choice to go back to school, you're paying not only the cost of your education and the cost of living and all that sort of stuff, you are foregoing a salary.
Opportunity cost.
It's the opportunity cost, of course. And so that's why, when I I mean, I applied as soon as I was able to apply to vet school. And because it was important to get through that as quickly as possible because of the opportunity cost of foregoing a year's salary. And that opportunity cost is real. That is, it's that sort of stuff adds up over the course of an earning lifetime.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, okay. And then, but in your second year, you got the health profession scholarship, which
Yes.
must have helped a tremendous amount with veterinary school. So did they pay years 2 through 4?
They paid for junior and senior year. So they paid tuition. I got a stipend. They paid for my books. They paid all the fees.
Wow.
And I had to do, we call it active duty for training. I got a full-time salary when I went and did my externships. I had to do an externship. I had to do active duty for training. And I got paid I forget what I think I got paid as an E5 as a sergeant or something. But they provided housing and all that sort of stuff. So it was, and that made a significant difference. And I graduated with less than $40,000 worth of debt as a non-traditional age student.
Amazing. And tell me, what do you think made you competitive for the health profession scholarship?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I tried to get it my first year of vet school, and I was the first runner-up. Okay, and so they selected I think 3 people the first year I had tried it, and if one of them had said no, I would have been selected. And then I really wanted it, and I remember hearing that I wasn't going to get it. It came up again. They urged me to apply again. I mean, I had really good grades. I had really good recommendations. I was pretty committed to doing this because I wanted to be a laboratory animal veterinarian, and I wanted to go through the Army program because they were in the process of rebuilding the program. I knew I could put it together so that I could get a good, I could focus myself so that I could get a good score on my boards and pass my boards the first go around and all that sort of stuff. And so that was the goal at that point. And then what ended up happening is I was really disappointed I didn't get it my first year of vet school. And so when I was writing my essay, I resubmitted my transcripts. I didn't have to do anything else. It was a pretty easy second application. I laid it out all on the line, and I'm pretty sure my application said, I am a natural born leader, and if you don't pick me, I will simply take my leadership skills elsewhere.
You're an idiot. What is wrong with you people? Can't you see? Right? Wow. Amazing. Yeah. And okay, so you were just really cheeky and bold in your application? I mean, it sounds like you had all the credentials and there was no reason for them not to choose you. So it must have been the essay portion of your application the first time around. Maybe you didn't catch their attention and make yourself memorable that way sufficiently.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, and I think that's true. And I mean, honestly, since then in application essays for things, which, I still write, I apply for business grants. There are a ton of things that I still apply for as a business owner. Basically my tact is you're an idiot if you don't pick me. I mean, I don't say it in that many words, but it's no, I'm brilliant and I'm doing brilliant things out in the universe. And you need me to be a part of your program because I will bring fame and glory and honor to your program.
Oh, own it, woman. I love it. Yes. We don't toot our own horns as loud as we ought to, and as often as we ought to, and as blatantly as we ought to.
No. And it turns some people off, and I really don't care because, haters gonna hate. People have their own things, and it's okay for me to be out in the world the way that I am, and to have people not like me, and I'm fine with it.
Right.
Turns out the Army liked me. At least when I was putting my application in, the selection board liked me.
Yes. I really like this philosophy of living. You may as well just be who the hell you are.
Right.
Because it's miserable to live life the way other people want you to be, or the way you think other people want you to be. So
Want
just
you to be
be
right.
yourself, and some people are going to hate you and some people are going to love you, and it's going to be fine.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And it is our, I really believe in my undergraduate, um, our mission statement at Wellesley is, and this is in Latin, it's non ministrare sed ministrare. And it's not to be served, but to serve. Okay. And my mission in life is to go out and serve people. And I have very specific ways that I talk about how I am in service to the world. But as professionals, as people, it's our job to go find the people who we are meant to serve and serve them. Okay. And the people that I'm meant to serve are not the same people as you're meant to serve, or not the same people as another veterinarian is meant to serve.
Mm-hmm.
There is enough service needed and there's enough to go around.
I like that.
Going out and being in service to people. And that's even in applications, a selection board, people who are reading applications for vet school, the problem they are trying to solve, all right, is that they are looking for candidates that will represent the school well, that will represent the institution well, that will represent the Army well. That's their problem. Okay. And they need to fill seats and that sort of thing. You have to prove to them that you're going to solve their problem. Your application cannot be about you. It must be about the solution you are proposing.
Yes.
For people.
Yes.
Because that's how you get selected, because you have to be out there solving problems.
Yes. Yes. So your application, and probably to vet school, it was the same. You were talking about not yourself, but your vision of how you were going to serve once you complete your degree. Yes. Brilliant. Yep. Absolutely brilliant advice. Now, okay. So I have to ask you, okay. So you get into vet school. What did you think? How did it go? Did you love it?
Yeah. I loved vet school for the first 2 years. Okay, I loved all of my didactic training. I'm a really good student, and I can memorize like you wouldn't believe. Like it's just the way my brain works. I can really, really memorize. And I did fabulously right up until like our orthopedics didactic course. And orthopedics, I could not even fathom, like how bones, like I can memorize all the bones. I cannot memorize how those bones go together. So orthopedics was a bit of a challenge, but that's okay. I memorized my way to a B, and that was fine. So I loved my professors at Georgia, and I loved being in the classroom and the classroom setting in Georgia. My second 2 years were significantly more challenging. I hated clinics. I absolutely hated clinics. I figured out how to spend most of my time not in the small animal hospital or the large animal hospital, because I figured out really, really quickly. And I had actually kind of figured out while I was in my first 2 years that I didn't like clinics, because I was on like large animal treatment team, and I did stuff in the small animal hospital. And so by the time we were picking our rotations in sophomore year for junior and senior year, I knew I did not want to spend a lot of time in the hospital. I was also doing lab animal medicine. And so like, we don't have a huge lab animal component at Georgia. And I mean, I did what we had, but it wasn't in the small animal hospital. Right. And so I ended up doing like a ton of externships. And the only things I did at Georgia were like the 5 core things that I had to do, like community practice and radiology and anesthesia. And I don't even remember all those.
Right.
So I spent most of my junior and senior year not at Georgia, out in the world. But it was really good because it gave me a lot of contacts. And there are some people who I still really stay in touch with as a result of my externships junior and senior year. But that was, I'm not gonna lie, that was really fairly hard, recognizing that I especially don't like small animal clinics, because that's what you think of when you think of being a veterinarian, right?
And it's sort of what made you decide you wanted to be a veterinarian. You took your cat to the vet, and it took 3 months to figure out the cat had diabetes, and you're like, what the hell? I need to know what doctors know, because Like,
Right.
why did this happen? This shouldn't happen.
This shouldn't
Ended
happen.
up
Right.
not pursuing that path. That's really, really interesting. So
Yeah.
what was it about small animal clinics in particular that you didn't like?
Well, there are a couple of things. One, I discovered, and I really didn't know this until junior year surgery, my handshake. I have an intention tremor. It's much more pronounced in my brother, and so we knew he had it because he's had it forever, but I didn't know I had it. And when I would go and throw a suture, like I would end up in Wisconsin. Like it was so like, you know, those nice, neat rows of sutures that you see people do. I literally can't do that because on that fine motor work, my handshake.
Hmm.
And so surgery was horrifyingly stressful.
Hmm.
I found out, and this is a terrible thing to say, I don't like baby animals because I'm afraid they're going to die, you know, and I can't, and I have a very hard time with that. I know like the whole death thing was not something I could do. It turns out it was just not, it was not, I wasn't cut out for it. I couldn't dissociate myself from it in the way people can. And it was not for lack of trying, but I'm not going to lie. The last spay I did, the dog died, and I've never spayed another dog since.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry you had that experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm never. It was bad. It was bad, and I've never spayed another dog since.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm really glad that you brought this up and you've been so honest about it because I think this is really important. Some people hate the first 2 years of didactics and classroom learning and all the like academic medical knowledge that you're picking up and
Right.
love clinics. And some people are the opposite, like yourself. And actually like me, I've gone back to ER medicine, which I love, but it took me a long, long time, 4 or 5 years of misery in order to get to the point where I could handle the emotional aspect of clinical practice and still love practicing medicine. But that's why clinics are, the stakes are there. Whereas when you're in a classroom, it's all just theoretical and it's fascinating,
Right, exactly. And I'm good at it, so I liked it. But, practical clinical medicine and things that you don't realize, like it's really hard for me to put in a catheter because my hands are not where my brain tells them to go. And there's nothing I can do about it, and so those sort of, and I'm not like one of those kinds of people that is like, oh, I'll let the techs do it. I wasn't about to tell a tech to put in a catheter if I couldn't do it myself. That's not how I approach things. And, it turned out like a lot of the fine motor coordination really stopped me. But then a lot of the inefficiencies of small animal medicine drove me insane, and a lot of the client interactions and things like that. There are really obvious ways in my head to get from point A to point B, and if you have a money problem with it, just tell me you have a money problem with it. I'm not going to judge you for having a money problem. I'm not one that says you should go and spend $10,000 on your dog. I don't have $10,000 to spend on my own dog. Right. And you shouldn't take money out of your kids' mouths to save your pet. Well, it turns out that like is not how some corporate overlords actually want you to approach veterinary medicine. And so it was, it's just, small animal clinics, just even when I was doing it in the Army and stuff like that, it was easier in the Army because we really didn't do anything crazy. But it was not what I really liked doing.
Interesting. And you discovered that in veterinary school.
Yeah. Because when I was doing a veterinary assistant, and we were vet techs back then. It was before everybody was registered vet techs. People liked me because I cleaned cages. I love cleaning cages. Because one, I'm good at it. And two, like when you clean a cage, there's like a definitive endpoint and the cage is clean and the blankets are soft and they smell good and you can make the animal comfortable. And I love mucking stalls. I love cleaning barns. I love cleaning cages. And so I did all of that stuff, drawing up vaccines, like getting everything ready for the doctor. I loved doing all of that. I always hated anesthesia. And that was, so as far as I knew, I liked being in the clinic but it was because I was doing all of this veterinary assistant work that I really liked doing. you
That's
know?
fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. Because, yeah, some people, and I think I'm one of them, like you really get satisfaction out of doing a job and knowing exactly what you need to do in order to do it perfectly. And
Right.
then doing it perfectly. Whoa, that's awesome. Awesome feeling.
And then
It's done.
being
I
done
checked
and
it
moving
off
on.
my list. Medicine is
Exactly.
not like that at all. No, 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 no. It's so ambiguous and sometimes so
Right.
nebulous. And what should I do? Well, there's 100 different ways that I could approach this. And
Right. And
when
maybe I'm
it's
picking the
finished,
right one and maybe
it's
I'm
not really
not.
finished.
And
Yes, yes. Yes, how
yeah.
fascinating. A lot of ambiguity. So, okay, that's really cool that you figured this out during veterinary school. And I think that people who are listening should take note of this. Like, pay attention in vet school. Like, what is
Yeah.
really floating your boat and getting you excited? And what is
Right.
something like you? Oh, I don't really like that. I hate it. I hated going out to like a large animal. We'd go out to the farms, and like do physical exams on cows. I hated it. And I
Yeah.
took note of that. So in Georgia,
Right.
did they have like, because I know not all schools track and they don't all track separately. At Virginia Tech, where I went, they had small animal, large animal, mixed animal, and public corporate. And looking
Right.
back, I think perhaps I should have taken public corporate. I mean, I'm glad
Yeah.
how everything turned out because I love ER medicine now, but I also love doing other things. But did you have like a public corporate track that allowed you to spend so much of your time away from the the academic teaching hospital?
Yeah. Actually, we were, I think, if I remember correctly, we were the first class that they really tracked. And so when we came in, so like I went into vet school thinking I was going to be a horse doctor. That turned out not to be the case. And so we had to pick on like the second day of vet school whether we were going to dissect a dog or dissect a horse. And that was it. That was what you were getting. Now you had to like go over and you were still tested on dog dissection if you dissected the horse and vice versa. And we still had a bunch of other things in there. But I primarily dissected a horse. And that was when we started tracking. So you tracked small animal or large animal basically on day 2, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we had, and then I tracked, so that was the first decision that you had to make. And then you had to make the decision for your clinics, what you were going to do, whether you were going to take mixed animal, large animal, small animal, or corporate. And I chose corporate because by the time sophomore year rolled around, I was like, the hell I am doing all of the stuff that I had to do for large animal or small animal. I had a whole bunch of externships lined up with places that I had done summer work with. I had a 12-week externship on campus doing research, trying to figure out whether or not I was going to do a PhD. So, right. So, because there are a lot of people who go into lab animal medicine that are doing PhDs, and I needed to know if I was going to be a bench jockey. It turns out, as much as I can't throw sutures, I also can't pipette. I can't hold a pipette without shaking. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to get a PhD because I can't do molecular research, which is what I was interested in. I really wanted to do immunology. And when you're getting a PhD in immunology and committing to that, there is a lot of pipetting in your future, and running gels, like pipetting. Oh my God, pipetting into gels. Oh, I couldn't. I mean, I ruined so many gels. It was horrifying. It was so horrifying. But it was a really valuable 12 weeks because I figured out I was never going to go get a PhD. Because I literally physically couldn't do the bench work. And if you can't do the bench work in a science PhD, then, you might as well have gone back and gotten a PhD in economics. And so, yeah, so that by the time I was picking, those were the decisions I was making. Am I going on to a PhD in conjunction with doing a lab animal residency? That's the kind of decision I was making because I was full bore lab animal. I love primates. I love rats. and that sort of thing. And in lab animal medicine, by and large, I'm not the one doing the fine work. It's the registered lab animal techs
Hmm.
that were doing that. And we had that whole setup in lab animal medicine every place that I worked.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, my school didn't have anything for lab animal medicine. Like, yeah, I mean, you would
Yeah,
have
you
to
had to
do
go look
that.
for it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and
Yeah,
like
you really had to go look.
primates, I remember hearing a story about, probably on Facebook or something like that, but this gorilla that they were anticipating a difficult birth. She was pregnant, and they called in a human gynecologist because veterinarians, we
Don't know how
don't
to help
study
gorillas.
primates, and
Right,
gorillas are more like humans than they are like dogs
sure,
or cats or goats or horses are the things that we
right.
study. So they brought in an MD OBGYN
Yeah,
for this primate.
yep. Yeah, and so that was that. I mean, that was the whole idea. Is I was going to be a lab animal doc, and that didn't work out.
Well, yeah, so let's move on to that. So after you graduated, you went into the Army because you had a promise to fulfill. And
Yep.
you needed to give them what, 4 years?
Back then it was 3 years active and 5 years reserve.
Okay.
And I got posted to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. I'm a Yankee, and what they don't tell you when you go into the Army is nobody wants to serve in the Northeast. And I was like, ooh, pick me, pick me. And so I got to go to, I really wanted to go to Fort Devon, but that didn't end up working out. That's in Massachusetts. So I ended up going to Fort Monmouth, and Fort Monmouth is a food inspection station because of the sheer volume of food that is created for Department of Defense consumption in the tri-state metro area. It's huge volumes of food.
I didn't know that. So you picked the location because you liked that location. Nobody else seemed
My
to.
husband was so I had gotten married the year I graduated from vet school. My husband was from New Jersey, and so he did an in-state move, and he didn't have to change jobs.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah,
But
so
so it
it was
was
perfect.
primarily the location that drove your choice. But then
Mm-hmm.
it just so happened that because of the location, your focus then in the Army was on food safety. Whereas if you'd chosen a different location, it might have been, 60% animal clinics and
Right. I
whatever.
mean, there was somebody in my graduating class who got assigned to do dolphin medicine with the seals in San Diego. Right. Because we take care of them.
Right, right, right. Yes, yes.
And so it could have been completely different. I mean, almost every veterinarian has some focus on food safety and food inspection in the Army, just because of where we are and where food is produced and how food is bought for consumption on base.
Mm.
So there were two things. One, the Fort Monmouth posting was a major posting, and so it was a grade above my pay grade. And if I wanted to get into a lab animal residency, that looked really good on my Army transcript, because I said, I'll take a major position, whatever, I'll do it. And so I had a bigger budget, I had more staff, I had more responsibility, and part of that more responsibility was I had like more places to go do inspections. So that was also a large part of it.
Huh. But you did
Yeah.
not pick it because you were particularly interested in food safety.
No, I had no. I mean, I had done some while I was on active duty, but it was not. No, it was not something I had a. I mean, everybody knows you're going to do food safety when you go into the Army program, but it was not something I ever really thought about. And they taught us how to do it, and it turns out I'm a really good auditor. You know, I'm good at it. I'm good at blending into the walls and watching people what they're doing, and saying, okay, well, this is what's working and this is what's not working. And I learned all of those skills in the Army, and I got really good at them. And that's how I got into into food safety in some part. I mean, it was a skill set that I had.
Yes, yes. And we're going to get to that because I definitely want to talk about what you're doing now. But so I'm just trying to figure out. So you had to do 3 years active duty.
Mhm.
And then I know that because I've interviewed other Army veterinarians who also did the health profession scholarship. And I know that at some point you have a decision to make, because the Army says if you want to continue to stay in the Army, you need to pursue more education. Like you need to
Yeah.
get board certified in
Mhm.
preventive medicine or lab animal medicine. So why did you choose not to do that?
I had an experience in my first 2 years in the Army that made it entirely clear that that was not the organization that I needed to be in.
Ah, I see.
I mean, I don't, like without throwing my commander under a bus, it was just not, I was not able to be the person the universe was calling me to be in the Army. I'm glad that I did it now, but I was not glad that I was doing it then. And it was, yeah, it was pretty crazy. But I was in active duty for 3 years, and by the end of year 2, I had decided there's
Wow.
no way that I am committing to an organization that has promoted my commander to where she was, given the things that she had done. That was not an
Mm,
organization that I wanted to be a part of.
mm, mm.
I got another commander after that, and he was amazing. And he was like, Michelle, I know you've made your decision. Don't judge us all by that particular experience. There are some of us who feel the same way that you do.
Mm.
But it was at that point really kind of not the right fit.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
and I decided to move on.
Mm,
It's
mm.
kind of where it
I
went.
love what you said, that you could not be the person the universe was calling you to be if you
Right.
stayed in that organization. That is so beautiful. That should I need to make a placard out of that. And
Well, that is a hard thing to commit to, because that was true of many of the things I did
yeah.
after the Army.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
spending time, thinking about, who is the universe calling me to be? Am I being that person when I show up to work? And for
Right.
many jobs after the Army, the answer was no.
Exactly, exactly. And this is just perfect, because it really sums up the feeling that I had when I was looking at your bio and thinking about the path that you've taken to get to where you are now. Because so many of us, especially those of us who are type A personalities, which you kind of have to be in order to get into vet school, so many of us, myself included, are like, I will make up my mind as to what I'm going to do, and then I am going to act like a rabid bull and just like plow my way through every barrier, and I am going to do it. Versus, well, let's see what the universe is saying too. And by the like
Right,
God, whatever. But there's the external reality and there's our internal reality. And we need to
right.
have some communication. And you seem like you're really good at this, at
Well, it's a
taking the
learned
back end.
and
Yes.
learnable skill.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, I wasn't good at this. I am good at knowing when I'm miserable, and I'm good at extricating myself when I'm miserable. Okay. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
that is something I have, when all other options fail, pay attention to what my body is telling me. And so, but it got to the point, I left the Army. I had a series of jobs that just didn't work out. And I was on the phone with my brother, and he's like, Michelle, it's you. It's you. And it took a lot for me to say, no, I really don't think that partially it is me, but I had jobs where I was called stupid. I had jobs where people yelled at me, and really, I had one veterinarian that I worked for that was like, did you even go to class when you were in vet school? Because you're the dumbest veterinarian I have ever worked with.
It should not even be legal to say that. Right. That's
It took
horrible.
everything in me to not cry. But I had worked I had turned my life inside out to be a veterinarian, as we all do, right?
Yeah.
To be treated like that. And it takes a lot of guts to recognize it's not me. People who, was I a perfect veterinarian? No, but that doesn't mean you treat people like that. And it takes a lot of guts to say, you know what, I don't care what happens. I know I have small children at home. I know because I still had debt. I know we have a mortgage. I know, but you know what? This is not, nope, that's not it. And he fired me before I could quit, but it was going to happen on the same day. And so, yeah, no. And so there was a lot of that. And being the person who the universe calls me to be is both as simple and as difficult as that.
So it's about paying attention to how you're feeling physically and emotionally where you are. And the universe, I mean, what I'm hearing from you, and I love this, is the universe is calling us to be happy.
Well, it's not even that. It's that, there is, because I don't think that we're going to be happy all the time. I don't think we should be happy all the time. There's appropriate places for grief and for anger and for resentment and things like that. And it's feeling those feelings,
Yes.
and letting yourself feel those feelings and move through them. That lets you know, I got this. Like, whatever the universe throws at me, I got this, because
Yes.
I can manage my own mind.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so it's not about being happy all the time. It's about being self-expressed. It's about being the leader. It's about being in service to the people who I am supposed to serve, and showing up 100% as that person.
Yes. But that's the kind of happiness I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about happy as in I never feel sad or challenged or worried or stressed.
Right.
No, I mean, you're paying attention to, it's so hard to describe, but I think you were saying, is this, can I be myself here?
Right. Right. Can I be who I mean, there are things about me, like I swear, and I'm loud, and I talk fast, and I make decisions really, really, really fast. And I, like those are all the qualities that I have. And I can either be in a place where those are qualities that are cherished, or I can be in a place where those qualities are really challenging. And it took me a long time to find a place where those qualities are cherished and not challenging. And that place is my own.
Right. Yes. Yes, I love it. I love it. Some of us, I mean, let's just face it, some of us are unemployable because we have such strong visions and strong personalities, and we need to be who we really are. And being a part of a greater organization, I mean, it's the same thing with like social cliques, right? I can't stand social cliques. You might like these people, but there is an expectation that you're going to conform to some of their norms, and I might not like those norms. So no, right?
Yeah. And, and it's okay. It's okay to be okay with people not liking you, that's fine. And, it gets to, but that's been a hard journey. I'm not going to lie. It's a hard journey to stop people pleasing and all that sort of stuff, and say, no, these are the skills that I have, and a way I can make a difference in the world. And so that's what I ended up doing. And it hasn't been without hardship. I mean, I go around telling people, like, be careful what you get good at, because you might get good at writing HACCP plans and driving in New Jersey. Because then you're going to write HACCP plans and drive in New Jersey for a living.
Which is what you do now. Okay. Let's come to this. All right. So you tried a few things after you left the Army. They weren't for you. They didn't work out. And then, and I know this because I watched your webinar on entrepreneurialism, then some really interesting things happened in your personal life that sort of led you to where you are. So can you talk about that?
Sure. So I was, let's see, I had my first baby in 2008, and I had hyperemesis while I was pregnant. So thank you, American taxpayer, because I estimated that pregnancy cost you $300,000. I had a sub-Q Zofran pump that was giving me 4 mgs of Zofran every hour for 17 weeks.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Wow.
It took 5 years for the inflammation to go away in my legs from where I had to put that medicine in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, so that was challenging. And so my first baby, Zachary, I desperately wanted to nurse him because I'd had such a hard time bonding, because he was like literally trying to kill me while I was pregnant. I desperately wanted to nurse. I was desperately depleted of all of my body resources. And it turned out, and I think it was because what I ate after I gave birth, but it turned out he was allergic to dairy and soy. And so here I was trying to nurse my kid. It went straight through him.
Ugh.
You know, he diagnosed failure to thrive. I mean, you want to feel like you're useless at absolutely everything. Try having your baby try and kill you. Have an emergency cesarean section so that your doctor can make his tea time, and then you can't nurse. It's like,
Oh my God.
unbelievable. And, you know, and I was very much caught in that upper middle class white woman, I have to nurse my baby in order to bond with my kid, you know, like those whole conversations that some women end up having. And I had to cut dairy and soy out of my diet. I was living in northern Jersey at the time. I went out to look for dairy and soy free foods, and it turns out I kind of had to make it all myself. And so I tried to source like local ingredients. This was at like kind of the beginning of the local food movement.
Right.
And I would have conversation after conversation with farmers and with people. And they're like, yeah, I would do this, except I can't write the food safety plans. I can't write the food safety plans. I can't write my HACCP plan. I couldn't get local meat because like the guy who was doing it, who owned the local slaughterhouse, was constantly in trouble with the USDA. And I was like, I can help you write that HACCP plan. And he's like, well, da, 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 da. But that's really what happened is I figured out that these people who I like were having the conversation that I want to have about local food and eating, a wholesome diet from the perspective, kind of like from a Michael Pollan perspective, and changing the conversation around food and farming and agroecology. I really liked those people. And I had a skill set that I could bring them that very few people could.
Yeah.
I could write a HACCP plan because—
What's a HACCP plan?
It stands for Hazard Analysis for Critical Control Points. And it's a type of food safety plan that is required when you do meat and poultry production, when you do fisheries, when you do juice, that sort of thing. And I learned to write it in the Army because I audited them. And I was like, okay, well, I can do this, so I might as well. And so what happened is, kind of in the course of me figuring out after the Army what we were going to do, I was so miserable in New Jersey. I had so many bad job experiences. We picked up and we moved to Maine. I was like, I'm not raising the kids in New Jersey. Let's go to Maine. My mother is from here. Like, my whole family's from Maine. And so we picked up and we took the rest of the money and moved to Maine. And I was getting involved in local food and local agriculture, and my business started when I was at the Ag Trade Show in 2013, and the largest organic beef producer in Maine came up to me in this fabulous old-timey Maine accent. He's like, so I hear you can write a HACCP plan. And I was like, yeah, I can. He's like, can I pay you to write me one? And I was like, okay.
Wow.
And so that's how my business was born, and I've been 100% customer funded ever since.
Yes, and in your webinar, you talk about you're going into your 6th year as CEO of Dirigo Food Safety, and you're anticipating $1 million year.
I am. If everything works out, I'm going to have $1 million year.
That is so amazing and so exciting. I just love the story of how you've ended up where you're at. I mean, it's twists and turns and being open to, the universe and what you're learning about yourself. And you alluded to this. Be careful of what you choose to get good at, because then you're going to have to do that.
Right.
So, do you like writing HACCP plans for these organic farmers?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I do. And it's not the actual process of writing the HACCP plans. I mean, I can write them in my sleep now, and I actually have a technical writer that does a lot of that for me. I like more figuring out what problems they need solving and how to help them solve their problems. And I'm moving much more into a conversation about cultural change and leadership development in food processing and food production, so that my clients can build the businesses the universe is calling them to build, so that we can create sustainable, profitable food businesses to create strong regional economies.
Wow. I like that. Yeah. No, I mean, that's like, it's important. And it must give you a tremendous feeling of fulfillment to be able to help people do that. So you're sort of a business consultant for them as well. Not
Yeah, no, I'm definitely, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, and I'm a subject matter expert.
nice. Yes. And so what is this Scarlet Spirit Enterprises? Uh,
Sure.
yeah. Well, what is it?
So basically, what I've done is I have this year I'm in the process of creating it. My business at Dirigo Food Safety is humming along really pretty well. I'm getting a lot of systems and stuff in place for that. And I have had so many people ask me, how did you do that? That I've created a business to teach them. And so that's what that is. And the idea is that I work with primarily women who are subject matter experts in a technical field. Okay, they're DVMs. I've had a lot of conversations with women who are with DVMs, MDs, JDs, accountants, and things like that. And they use their particular technical expertise to understand strategic problems in their target market. Okay. And they are looking for a way to create the kind of consulting company that I did where they can be the subject matter expert. But they need help in going out and figuring out how to get clients, how do you do your back end stuff, how do you do the target marketing, how do you, all that sort of stuff. And I have done it, and I have figured out a way to systematize it. And so now I'm helping other people go and do that, because there are so many of us who want the flexibility. I'm a Gen Xer. I have a mother who is in her 80s. I have aunts that I'm, like medical power of attorney for. Mm-hmm. I have small children. Mm-hmm. There are things that I need to do to be flexible, but I have this technical skill set and this way to solve problems in the world that the world needs. There are other women out there who can say the same thing. And I am seeking to go out and serve them so that they can solve the problems that need solving in their target market, so that we can build sustainable businesses, both their consulting business and their clients' business.
Beautiful. This is amazing. And I'm just wondering, okay, so, for instance, if there's a DVM who is, has worked 5 years in clinical practice and now thinks, I think I could be a consultant for veterinary hospitals to help them do it better. Because Lord knows there is a lot of improvement needed out there.
Oh, my word.
In the small animal veterinary hospitals in the world. We can be doing things a lot better than we are.
Right.
So,
Right.
You can help somebody like that.
Absolutely. I have a whole system to figure out who they're going to target, because their target market is not veterinarians with a bank account. They have a specific kind of veterinarian: large animal hospitals, small animal hospitals, shelter medicine. Lord knows we could use, some cultural and process improvement in shelter medicine, and NGOs and all that sort of stuff. And so wherever you have gotten that technical expertise, and you feel like, okay, I need to make a bigger impact, not by dealing with clients on a daily basis or doing high volume dog space or whatever. And that's perfectly appropriate for some people. Mm-hmm. It's just that there are a bunch of us who are having a different conversation, and who want to have a larger effect on more businesses. Mm-hmm. Well, I can help you go set that up. I can help you. I can walk you through the marketing system that only works 100% of the time if you follow the recipe, so that you can go out and serve the people that you're meant to serve. Mm. I mean, what if there is a podcast listener who's listening that's like, what? I really have a good idea around how we can make small animal hospitals kinder places to be. And what if we did this sort of training with, hospital managers? Mm-hmm. And their hiccup is they can't figure out how to set up the business and go find those hospital managers. I can help them do that. And there's no reason that I shouldn't shouldn't take the time and the learning that I've put into doing this so that I can help them.
Amazing. Well, what about somebody who, who has a DVM, who's just coming to the conclusion that they're feeling burned out of clinical medicine, They don't really
Right.
know what they want to do. Could they, consult with you? And because when I talk to you, I feel like you're like pulling the curtain open and I'm peeking into a window and I'm looking through this window like, holy crap, look at that huge universe over there. I didn't know all that stuff. Like, so you
Right.
have an idea of a really broad world of possibilities. So could somebody who just didn't even know what they wanted to do, they just know that they want to do something that's theirs, could they
Yeah.
just like
Well,
brainstorm with
and
you?
absolutely. And one of the things that's really interesting is that when you start paying attention to who the person is that the universe is calling you to be, the answers are generally not subtle. I mean, it's much like pig medicine. There is nothing subtle about pig medicine. Pigs are not subtle creatures. Okay. When you feel the universe calling you to do something, you have two choices. You can either listen to the universe and commit to all the changes that you're going to need to make, all right, and go through those changes and be that person, or you can ignore it, and ignoring it, you can lead a lot of a good life, but I think a lot of us would probably say that ignoring it hasn't led to where we want to be in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie, looking in that window and peeking at the larger universe and the bigger change that you can make using the DVM degree that you've gotten
Mm-hmm.
can be scary, but it's
Oh,
so worth doing. It
right.
is so worth doing because being able to show up to work fully expressed, being with the people who you're meant to be with, serving the people that you're meant to be with, there's no way to describe it that's adequate. We spend 80% of our waking lives at work. We might as well make it something that matters. We might as well be the people we're supposed to be and work with people we actually like, who
Mm.
don't yell at us and call us stupid
Mm.
and do all the things that we hear about in veterinary medicine and the ways that we mistreat each other and that sort of thing. And I'm not gonna lie, it's scary, but that's what you get a coach for. You get a coach to say, you can do this. Here are the constructs to help you do this.
Mhm.
It's not, I mean, in my case, it's not harder than pharmacology and orthopedics and, trying to get along with people in the small animal hospital. These are learnable skills. It's a learnable skill to peek through that window, be afraid, and be okay with being afraid and
Mm.
do it anyway.
Mm. Mm. I love it. Now, Dr. P, do you have any specific advice that you would like to give people who are looking to become veterinarians?
Well, this is probably not the podcast where I say don't, but if you are committed to becoming a veterinarian, I would do everything in your power to limit your debt. If debt is already your reality, I recommend being well immersed in that reality and doing, when you go out into the working world, figuring out what we call a profit first model. So Profit First is a book. It's a book that it's a paradigm of business accounting, I guess. It's not really accounting, it's a business methodology where you pay yourself first. All right. If you have huge amounts of debt, if you have things that you want to do in the world, be really cognizant about what your inflows and outflows are. All right. And if they are not matching up, acknowledge that, understand it, and figure it out. Don't pretend, oh, if I just get this job, $80,000 a year, it seems like so much money. It's very hard to service $250,000 worth of debt on an $80,000 a year job.
Right.
And understand that reality and don't run away from it. And have really, really good plans for how to deal with that reality after your loans come out of forbearance for grad school or whatever it is that you are doing. So I would really understand that. And then the other thing that I would do is that I would be not afraid to leave toxic places.
Amen.
There are many, many animal hospitals where they treat the new grads terribly. And leaving those is okay and is preferable to getting ulcers, to feeling suicidal, to being treated horribly every single solitary day. Like, have your own back, that you can make a decision. That hospital may have misrepresented itself when you applied. They're never going to tell you that they're going to yell at you and tell you you're stupid at the job interview, right? But listen to your own inner voice when it says, this is not
the
where I
place
am.
for me.
This is not the place for me. Even if other people have been there for 20 years,
Yep.
Even if it's a 5-minute commute, even if it does, it's like, the money is good and I can see my kids. If you are dying inside when you go to work, pay attention to that and leave.
Get the F out.
Get out. That person is not worth it. They're not worth it, and leave.
Yes.
And just up and leave. And if I swear to God, if new graduate veterinarians or other veterinarians who were treated like trash at work by the head doctor, by the hospital manager, by the vet techs, if they all walked off the job tomorrow, our culture would change like that.
You got it.
Have your own back. Understand that you are 100% lovable and there's no reason for you to be treated like that. And
Amen.
walk out.
Yeah. Walk out for yourself and for the rest of us. Because
walk out for the people coming behind you.
If we stop putting up with this, all of us, then this cannot go on.
Right. I mean, we train people how to treat us. And I'm not proud to say I people pleased and I tried to make my medical directors happy and I tried to make everybody happy. And you can't make other people happy. Other people have to choose to be happy. I have to choose to be happy. You have to choose to be happy. Those are thoughts that we create in our own mind. I could not make those people happy. There was nothing, I could have done everything perfectly and they still would have been unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so if you just, figure out that it's not your job to make other people happy, it is your job to, be the person who the universe is calling you to be and to not put up with it when they really treat you like trash.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We would, the number of cultural problems in these conversations would go away.
Right. Yeah. Or to have to practice in a way that isn't consistent with your medical ethics,
Right.
Well. Yeah. And I just want to go back to just briefly, because we didn't go into it in a lot of detail, but I know it's there. And that is that when you were going through, that you had some bad jobs that made you very unhappy after you left the Army, that was not financially easy for you to
leave.
You had a lot of courage and you had to say, I don't care. Like, I will be a coffee store barista if I have to. I am not staying here.
Yeah, no, and that's true. But I have to point out that is a very privileged white woman conversation I am allowed to have, because the generational wealth transfer that I have been privileged to have, that I had zero to do with, has to do with the color of my skin. Okay, and it has to do with the fact that my ancestors were not systematically disenfranchised from the economic system and capitalism the way other people were. So I could make that decision because I had familial wealth, and I'm not talking hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm talking about, like, my mom gave us a $20,000 loan so that we could, move. It's not huge amounts of intergenerational wealth, but it is enough to be out of the reach for many. And so that's why I say you have to be cognizant of your own economic reality. And we who have benefited from that, from access to the banking system and from access to intergenerational wealth, need to be cognizant of giving advice to people who simply don't have that, because that part is really, really hard. But that said, you borrowed money to be a veterinarian. You can borrow money to not be miserable, because if you are not miserable, you will figure out how to make that money back.
Yes, exactly. But when you say you borrowed money to become a veterinarian, you can borrow money to not be miserable as a veterinarian. If you don't have the kind of resources that you did, then are you talking about going to bank and getting a personal loan, or? Because in
Right.
my mind, I just think, well, shoot, yeah, I could be a coffee store barista, and I wouldn't be able to pay my student loan debt, but I'd go on IBR, and like
Right.
that's the extent of my
But
plan.
that's right. But I mean, going on forbearance, you're renting your money.
Yeah,
That's a way of taking, I mean, it doesn't have to be going to a bank. It has to be, it's like, okay, going into forbearance, doing deferments, doing whatever it is that you could do. And there are there are credit counselors coming out our ears and
yeah,
that sort of thing. It's being honest enough with yourself to have those conversations. There are a ton of people who can't have those conversations because it's like the enterotomy where we do a peek and shriek. Like you open it up, you're like, oh my God, let's sew that back up and ship it.
right.
You get your loan notification in the mail, and you peek and shriek, and you put it in the bottom of the circular file, and you don't think about it, and you don't, and you're and that kind of thing on top of a job that you hate is not a way to live.
And it's
You know,
not a way to escape misery.
it's not a way to escape misery. And I have said this before, and I will say it again. I have an open letter out on Medium that said, if you are absolutely at the end of your rope, you can come and live with me. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, live in the woods. If you are at the end of it, okay. And I've made this offer to veterinarians. You can come live in the woods of Maine with me, and I will teach you how to start a consulting business.
Wow.
And we will figure out how you can pay me when you figure out how to pay yourself.
Wow.
And so, like it's not like I'm running a charity here, but if ask people for help, and there are ways that this can work, and you've got to be imaginative. But I think there's so much when you look in that window and you see that wider world out there, that we have a failure of imagination that you can actually exist there.
Amen.
And you got to be willing to let your imagination go there so that you can actually be the possibility of creating that universe out there where you're happy and you're doing what you need to do.
What an incredible, inspiring story and message. I'm just so honored to have had the opportunity to speak with you, and I feel incredibly inspired myself. Dr. P, do you have a favorite charity that you would like to mention in the event that people listening who would like to thank you for your generous time and advice, might consider giving a donation to?
I would like anybody who is considering giving a donation to go to aclu.org and give to the people who are fighting there on the front lines for this to be the country that I put on a uniform to defend.
Okay, I will put that in the show notes. Thank you so very much for your time and for this conversation. It's really been eye-opening, and I think I'm going to have to think about the stuff that we said for days and days to process it. But I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've enjoyed it so very much.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that you got in touch, and I was delighted to be here.
All right, you take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.